It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retired. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, in this powerful conclusion to our mini-series, Taatjes distills 7 years of retirement insight since publishing Repurposed, the Untold Story of Retirement in America back in 2017. From redefining work's roles in retirement to mastering the psychology of spending, Ben weaves together the most transformational lessons that have shaped thousands of retirees' journeys. Plus, in today's episode, he drops an exciting announcement. A revised edition of Repurposed is in the works. Whether you're planning for retirement someday or it's already there, these battle-tested insights will revolutionize how you think about your next chapter of life. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Jared Sebesta joining you on another episode of Retire Repurposed. If you happen to be new to the show, we speak a different language on this podcast. If you were to actually Google or search retirement podcasts, most of those, if not all of those, are going to be based around financial plans, strategy, and tactics. And certainly we believe that those are important, and we recommend that you take those aspects of your retirement seriously. But there's a different element of retirement that we spend nearly all of our time talking about: the life side, the mindset side, the marriage side, the physical wellness side, how all of these things integrate together to really help you step into something bigger and bolder beyond your working years. So if you're new to the podcast, new to the show, we welcome you. Like and subscribe our shows and share them with maybe somebody that you know that needs to hear this message. Maybe they're approaching retirement, perhaps they've retired, and they need a little pick-me-up and maybe a paradigm shift on how they look at their life and their retirement. If you would do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, on the last several shows, we have spent a lot of time dissecting some of the changes, maybe not the changes, but some of these concepts that were first laid out in Ben Taatjes' book, Repurposed, the Untold Story of Retirement in America, back in 2017. We've spent about 8 episodes really taking these initial concepts that were laid out in the original book and expanding them. Why? Well, because that's what happens with the message. When you teach and preach it and continue to meet with clients, the message evolves and gets more precise with time. And that's how we have spent the last couple of months on this show. We're going to do a little recap here today and really give you, kind of put a bow on this mini-series, so to speak. Ben Taatjes joins me on the show now. And again, let's just kind of go back, Ben. Let's rewind the tape back to 2017. You're launching your first book. By the way, you're doing a revised revision right now as we speak. But talk about the message back then and kind of how it has evolved, so to speak, over the last 8 or so years.
Yeah, Jared, it's been a lot of fun. And I go back to those days when we were contemplating writing the book and kind of working on the stories that were going in the book, right? And I had a journal. I journaled that as I shared the ideas with you, other team members, clients, the things that my clients were teaching me, right? I mean, I feel very fortunate and blessed to be in this business for well over 20 years. And as a young man starting out, I had the opportunity to sit across the table from so many successful people. And I think more than anything, our business, whether it be this side of the business or the financial side, we're in a wisdom business. And where do I find wisdom? I find it from the Bible and people that read it and that can communicate and really translate that into usable nuggets, if you will, for people at whatever stage of life they're in.
Sure.
And that's really what the book was. It was me trying to say, okay, clients have taught me these things, and I want to be able to impact more people with that information. And I mean, think about that. If you're a financial person and you're sitting across the table from thousands of people over the years and you're taking good notes, you're going to have a lot of great information. Yep. And I think the first book did that. Yep. I think it did. I think so many of the ideas in there can get people to really rethink what they think, how they think about retirement. And this whole idea of becoming repurposed, still stand by that name. I still love the idea that people have great purpose throughout their life, but something is going to change when they retire and walk away from work. That their purpose doesn't change. They're the same person, right? We're just trying to repurpose them into the best years of their life.
I think that's an important point, because people that listen to this show, people that read your book and your subsequent, revised version of the book, they're not getting just you. They're getting you plus 20 years of experience, you plus 20 years of experience plus, how many thousands of meetings do you think that you've had and people that you've helped, literally in the thousands. And so you're getting all of that packaged together into a lot of wisdom. And I commend you for your mindset on this too. This isn't about how to make more money and how to have the most money when you die and pass the most money on to your next generation, which again is a piece and important, but you're looking at it from a much different lens.
Yeah, we're looking at the lens, Jared, that we're not about having more money. We're about having a better life. It's all about well-being and making sure people, can see the path forward. And so many people get into retirement and they're not as happy as what they thought. I think that happens in life all the time. There's a chapter in my first book called The Showroom Effect. And I think the idea is we expect things to be way better than they are. When you actually get there, many, many things in this world let us down. And retirement is one of those things. So the whole idea is let's make sure that it doesn't let people down. In fact, it makes, like, they come into that season, which it should be amazing. They come to that season and they're like, wow, I'm using my skills, my talents, my abilities to do so much more than ever before. I'm being awakened to new ideas and new things that I could be doing. I'm making a huge impact, first on my family, but on my communities that I'm in. I love having those conversations with retirees that are living this lifestyle and that are really practicing the things that we talk about in the book.
Yeah. We've talked about that crescendo effect of, like, this is now the beginning of a great, perhaps the greatest season, where you really, like, you thought you kind of had it all figured out, and society will tell you that it's now cruise control, and then the curve kind of like tails off, but this is the time to really continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, people, what are we looking for later in life, right? It's we tend to look more and more on how did I live, right? As you look and your life is getting shorter, right? You start to feel like, did I do enough? Did I do enough for my kids? Did I do enough for my community? I'm getting that, Jared. I'm kind of middle age now, I guess. I'm in my mid-40s.
Yeah, no, you are.
Okay, kind of, right? No, as I've aged, I've realized, like, man, I'd go back and do a few things over. So what am I doing today? You can't go back and have do-overs, but what am I doing right now that really makes the improvements and changes that I think I should have made in the past? Yeah. Do them now, right? Again, we always say people someday, when I do hear regrets, they don't regret what they did, they regret what they did not do. And making sure people live these last years of retirement the best possible so they don't have regret is, that's what we're all about.
Yeah, well, I'm 6 months older than you, by the way, so I'm not making fun of you for being in middle age, because I'm right there with you. So yeah, that's a great setup, and I love you having the chance to share that with our listeners here once again. If you missed any of these last shows, go back about 8-9 shows and kind of start the binge, so to speak. But on today's show, we are going to kind of put a bow around this, and we're going to talk about kind of the top 5 concepts that we really want to nail down so people really understand what they can expect and what they should be focusing on retirement based on, again, these last 8 or 9 episodes. Ben, where should we start?
Well, I got to start with, what are you kind of moving away from when you're retiring, right? And that's work, right? Many people forget that they have to move into something, not just from something. But I think we also have to realize that work probably wasn't the problem. Quite honestly, I think society today is going to say, I work as least amount as possible, and that work is really the problem on why you're not fulfilled, and it just isn't. People have asked me before, well, if you have such a positive view on work, do you think we'll work in heaven? And we had a whole podcast on that months ago, years ago probably, but I do. I think we will work in heaven. It will look more like the pre-fall work, right, in the garden, where there was good, meaningful work. And I do think that's one of the biggest takeaways since writing the book that I didn't highlight enough, just how positive work is for people.
What are people's reaction when you throw that at them? Perhaps they're approaching retirement. Maybe they're one of these white knuckle retirees that we've kind of slotted as people that are really just like counting down the days. But if you throw this concept at them, what's the general reaction?
Well, I get a funny look because they're all excited to get away, to move out of the workplace and get it, and they're looking so forward to this exciting retirement, right? Which is exciting. But what I'll usually do is just spin it back to them and say, tell me, what was your best day at work? We have that question so many times, and it gets them thinking about the positive aspects of work. Mm-hmm. And the other thing it does, Jared, is it gets you to look at not necessarily what you did, it's who you did it for, sure. Who you did it with. Because work is really all about people impact. Like the best days, that's what I hear every time. If you're a carpenter, it was the day that a project was completed and you got to show it to a family. It's those days for a teacher where one of your students has the aha moment, right? Those are those positive parts of work. They're contributing value to other people, right? And I think that's what people have to remember. I'm not saying you got to work forever because work's so great, but you got to keep the positive aspects of work in your life.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to rehash an old show, but we did a show and we spoke specifically about a study done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and what that study showed from retirees is that essentially they were given back a certain amount of time. And to your point, people get maybe a little confused because they're looking for this exciting retirement, which I think life should be exciting. And really what we found is that people just kind of, I don't want to say wasted that, but spent 4 to 6 hours of that regained 8 hours watching TV and just kind of muddling around the house. And there's great to have some downtime and leisure time. We're not poo-pooing that, but it's like there has to be this value add aspect. And I think that show and that study really, really exemplified that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, most important thing is take control of that time. Take control of that newfound time that you got, and make sure that you are making a people impact and doing some of that positive work aspect, even if you're not doing the 9 to 5.
Yeah, and I think everybody can relate with that. I mean, there's always been times where you're excited, even if you had a quote unquote job that you maybe didn't like. There were those exciting times where you were excited to go to work and on fire about it. And I think that resonates with our soul. And I think that is a integral part of not only life here on this side, but likely on the other side as well. What's number 2?
The second thing, I think we are a financial business as well. And I think it dawns on me every time I have the conversation with retirees is that they're looking at money through the wrong lens. Right, we have to shift the mindset, quite honestly, from saving to spending. And I think that the key to that and the key to making sure you're looking at money properly is understanding that it is a tool. It is not the end goal, right? And looking like this wealth pile that you're putting together, but you have to look at it as if it's a means. It helps you get things. And again, that's more income focused. So we talked about that in the book, Repurposed, in the first version, this difference between wealth and income. And I think the changes and that quote unquote what I learned since writing the book is just how ingrained this idea is for people, and how our business, the financial business, does such a poor job of preparing people for the mindset shift, right? And this concept, Jared, of you should be budgeting in retirement. It's probably more important to budget in retirement than it was before retirement. Mm-hmm. But the idea of why you're budgeting is different. You budgeted to save before. Now you're budgeting to spend, to give you the freedom to use what you saved.
Yeah. Again, that's a massive chasm. I've used that word a number of times to describe this shift. And it's so important because, again, for people, especially that are new to the show, if you don't figure this part out, then you would go into this perpetual cycle of constantly trying to save, hold, and even perhaps hoard wealth until the very end. And that's just not, that nobody wins when you have that mindset.
No, they don't. I think it's super important. I mean, if you grasp something really tightly and you make a tight fist, that's hard work. Mm-hmm. Holding on to anything is hard work. But when you can loosen that with your hands, and you say, okay, this is not mine. I'm a steward of this, right? I'm trying to do my best with what I've been given, right? But it is not mine to be held on so tightly. I think that's a mindset shift that more people need to see and realize that, hey, this retirement season, if I'm going to enjoy it, I've got to be okay spending it. I've got to be okay using the funds that I have to do the absolute most experiences, the charitable giving, all the other things that I've been looking forward to doing. Right. You gotta do them now. Yeah. Or otherwise, again, people wait too long.
Yeah. And again, we've mentioned on previous shows like the actual financial plans. Lots of times, with all due respect, is sometimes the easy part because it kind of comes down to a mathematical equation. But this idea of switching the paradigm, the mind shift, letting go, it speaks to the heart, and that one, in many cases, is a lot more difficult. Number 3, I love this next one because we talk about a book that you had brought up from Arthur Brooks, and it just made a lot of sense to me when you brought it up.
Yeah, that one is getting back to work a little bit, but really it's the real reason that you're tired at work, right? And the book is From Strength to Strength, which kind of talks about and highlights. And I didn't do any of this in the first book. It needs to be part of the second one of why I see the really successful thriver type people get kind of burned out, right? It's because you're doing the wrong kind of work. You didn't realize that the work that you were so good at that got you where you are today needs to shift, and you need to move into more, I think, more wisdom focused, if you will, type work later in life.
Well, explain those two shifts in the book, because he talks about these two different strengths that come on and then kind of disintegrate a little bit, or not a little bit, a lot of it with time.
Yeah, Jared. So it's really two curves. There's these intelligence curves and different types of intelligence that he talks about. Jared, that first curve, like as you're growing and early in your career, it's probably more knowledge based. It's not how he puts it, but that's how I'll phrase it for the listener. It's like I'm so quick thinking, and I'm bringing my mind works better. Quite honestly, it's able to be faster, move quicker. It's building this vast knowledge. But then the second curve later in life is kind of like not knowledge but wisdom, right? It's allowing it's basically applying that knowledge in a way that makes a difference for others. So if you look at that and you say, okay, I'm stuck doing this mover shaker type business where I'm acquiring and I'm growing and I'm trying to, again, build knowledge and think quick and all that stuff, and you're trying to do that into your 50s, and you're not really creating enough of the people impact, and you're applying the wisdom side, you're gonna start to get tired.
Yeah, and I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but that first strength it feels and looks a lot like grit, like where you're building something, you have more energy perhaps, but that's, that strength kind of tops out in your 20s and 30s and then starts to tail off in your 40s and 50s, and then simultaneously the second strength, as Arthur Brooks calls it, starts to show up on the picture into your 40s, and then grows throughout your 50s and 60s and beyond to where it really doesn't ever tail off. That should bring a lot of excitement and empowerment to a retiree, knowing that there is a new strength that you can step into after retired, that you can tap into. And the tragedy is a lot of people don't do this, and they don't really ever utilize that strength that they now have.
Yeah, or they hold on to that early type work far too long, and it burns them out, and they end up just retiring. They move on,
and they can't wait to be done.
Right. So I want to make sure people understand that second curve is so important. We talk about retirees. It's like you have so much to offer this world. You have so much wisdom, right? You just have to learn how to apply it, and we're searching for it, Jared. I think it's something else we've talked about in shows in the past. Is like society today is after that wisdom. I think if you can combine some of that wisdom and that application of the knowledge to teams, I think there's a ton of runway for people that are kind of entering that second phase.
You mentioned the real reason why people are sick and tired of working by the time they retire. And you said too that it has to do with you're not really operating in your strength. And I think I made kind of a flusy comment, but I'll bring it up again here. But have you ever met like a construction worker that's in his 50s or 60s? Have you ever met a contractor in his 50s and 60s that's still doing that kind of work? Like, what's their attitude? Are they excited to go to work, or are they just completely burnt out?
Well, it depends on what part they're doing, right? If they're able to step back and they're able to do the stuff that, right, they can see the people impact.
Correct.
Either on their team
Yeah.
or on their customers. I think they can be loving it.
Yeah.
But yes, I know exactly the type of person you're talking about, and I've seen them. I've seen them in every line of work, Jared. It's like when we hold on to that too long,
Right.
everybody loses. You lose, and the people you could be impacting.
Yeah, exactly right. We got about 5 minutes left here. Two pieces of information to cover. Let's number 4.
Well, I think getting back into this, it's still around the idea of both work and the positive aspects, and the idea that our work later in life can start to look like identity. So, been doing a lot of work with some very successful people, Jared, and one of the things that does come up a lot is identity. So, started with an article I read around liminality and this being stuck in between, kind of this, I'm not quite in retirement, I'm kind of getting ready, I'm stuck. And really the concept that I'm trying to bring to people is your identity needs to start looking less like what you do and who you are. I mean, it sounds funny, but the reality is when people ask you, what do you do? It doesn't have to be work related. Right? We go there in our studies. Work's so important to so many people. Your career. I'm first a dad. Right? I'm first with my family. I've got these roles. I'm first a believer. I'm first a Christ follower. All the stuff that who make me who I am need to be highlighted, especially in a time when you're in liminality, when you're kind of in between roles. You've got to look back at why God created you, right? And who he made you to be. And it is beyond the work that you're doing.
Briefly, I want you to touch on this. We talked about the kind of the more traditionalists that had kind of your traditional jobs versus entrepreneurs. I don't want to say go-getters, but like people that were wired a little bit differently. This really hits them differently, so to speak.
It does. Sometimes I see people that have a traditional job. They're like, yeah, I do my 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 type work, and I go and I do it. I find value in my work, but when I'm at home, I'm at home. Yeah. I'm able to turn it off. I'm with my family. When I retire, I'm able to fully retire because it wasn't so much a part of my identity.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of us in the entrepreneurial space and the thriver space, that space. It's like, I wish I could get more of that sometimes. Yeah. And my family wishes I'd have more of that sometimes, where I can say, yeah, that is my job. First and foremost, I'm here for you, family. So if you're listening out there and you're like, yeah, I don't struggle with that. I actually see my job as just a small part of what I do. Yeah. And you're looking forward to retiring to do more of the other things. Great. Good for you. But I know there's a lot of people out there that do struggle with that. And I think we need to really build that side of it up, because we do end up talking to a lot of those type of people.
We got a couple minutes left here. This last point comes with a book by Bill Perkins called Die with Zero. Let's put a nice little bow around this episode.
Yeah, Jared. So we talked about this idea of dying with zero. Bill Perkins wrote the book, and I've introduced it to a lot of clients as we work with them on the financial side of our business, just to help them see that the use, it's more than just the creating a lasting legacy with your money. No matter what stage of life you're at, I want you to be thinking about the usefulness of money and when it's most valuable to you, and start looking at it differently. Again, as we said earlier, money's a tool. The tool of money is best used when you can have great experiences. And I want to make sure people hear that loud and clear, is that I'm not saying you're going to die with absolutely zero, but you should be okay with using your money while it's most useful to you.
We've got about 30 seconds left here. We're going to move on from this mini-series. We're going to start talking about some new topics next week. Give people a little bit of taste as to what we're going to kind of dive into in the weeks ahead.
Well, Jared, we are writing a new book. We're doing the version 2 of Repurposed. I'm excited to kind of begin to share some of the actual parts of that with people. But what we're going to be talking about is, this idea of just life. I felt it today really strongly on my way to work, just how important life is at any stage, certainly for retirees, that they would truly value what God's given them, be the best steward of their life and what they have left, to be somebody who gives life to others. And I want to make sure people hear that. Sometimes I think the repurposed idea can be not negative, but we can say, oh yeah, you're not doing enough out there. And make people feel like, oh, I've got to start my own nonprofit. I got to do something big. I want to make sure people have tactical, tangible things that they can do right now, no matter what stage they're at, that they can take a step into being a life-giving person.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.